Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abby.
That's me.
That's you.
And you. Aw, Pete's. You know, Justin's new thing for the podcast is to have different mugs every single time.
Like, this is a personal goal of his.
Oh, it's a choice that he's made that like every time will be a different mug. But I literally don't know what "this is the way" means.
I'm pretty sure it's the Mandalorian.
Oh, look at you knowing. Look
If I'm right.
I bet you're right. That seems
If
he
I'm
likes the
right.
Mandalorian.
I'm like kind of turning into like
Or like some kind of Star Warsy thing. This is
Oh,
the way
yeah.
it would sound like a Star Wars thing.
100%. I just want to say though that I'm kind of turning into the full package right now of a person.
As a wife,
As
you
a wife,
are.
like if Johnny ever dies, I'm set because I've gotten into Lego. I've gotten into Star Wars.
Football,
Same with you.
basketball,
Basketball.
Star Wars.
Also, you are the full package because your husband has a toy room and you know all the things about the toys.
I don't know that that's what guys think is the full package, but
I mean, you always had the full package because in high school,
I love sports.
you loved
and-
sports. It was literally the worst being your friend because you're gorgeous. Every guy wants to date you, and then you also are like, "Hey, you want to play basketball together? Because I like do that too." And I was like, "Just can someone push this girl off a cliff, please? Why is she here?"
Do that too.
Because I like
to
do
play
all the
basketball
things.
because
Also,
I like do that too.
I like climb mountains and things, and it's like I'm like really good at it. Oh, and I'm low maintenance, and I'm great.
Oh yeah, because I was a catch before I learned how crazy I was. Like I could fake. I was the total package around like 22.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, because at that point I had bloomed. I was a late bloomer.
You were.
And then at that point I looked, like I'd gotten out of my 8 years of braces and my leg braces and my eye patch and my crazy hair. And so I would found my slot and I loved sports. I loved adventuring. I was like,
you did.
I was down to have fun any way that you could. But that sounds
Except for a couple ways.
That's not what I meant.
She was down to have most of the kind of fun.
I meant I was very fun. I was making every moment was fun for me.
Yeah, you were a very fun person.
And back then I could suppress my needs enough and my own opinions and my own feelings.
It was great.
Enough that I could do whatever I would be like, oh, you want me to be like this? I'll be like that. Like I was so low maintenance. I was the perfect girl, like Julia Roberts in Runaway Bride, but
you were 100% Julia Roberts in Runaway Bride. And little known fact about Abby Stumval is that she's been proposed to several times. She didn't make it down the aisle. She ran away before the aisle came.
100%.
She ran away before. How Justin got her, we're not sure. He was kind of rough around the edges. Like, what's his name in the Runaway Bride?
Richard Gere.
Yeah, Richard Gere. I was like, oh. You don't absolutely want me? Yeah. Okay. Which honestly, that's what attachment is it's the thing inside of you that says, I know how to be your missing puzzle piece.
Explain that.
Well, because attachment
We're talking about attachment today.
Yeah. I just was like, this is a perfect segue. It was like the thing inside of you that was made by your experiences with your parents
in childhood
was the thing inside of you that said, oh, I know, like our earliest experiences in childhood are a reflection of our attraction in adulthood. Does that make sense?
Not crazy?
It is.
It's earliest experiences in childhood are the reflection of what we are attracted to
in adulthood. Yeah.
Ooh.
So like the thing inside of you that's like, oh, I know how to be your missing puzzle.
That's what I did in my childhood. I was like, I'll be exactly what you want me to be.
Totally. I'll get all the love.
Yeah.
But I will say, on a side note, aside from attraction, I just want to say that there's hope for all the late bloomers out there. All the kids that you're like, is this kid going to make it?
Yeah.
They will make it.
Yeah,
they could be
awkward
Abby
and
Stumbaugh.
messy in every way possible.
100%.
But it's interesting because if you think about my childhood attachments, so my mom was one of my main attachments. So our parents are typically our primary attachments. Sometimes our siblings can be in there.
Yep.
And sometimes like a grandma or grandpa or somebody else.
Yep.
But our mom,
primary caregivers really take the cake. Yeah.
They affect us the most. And my mom was very, like, I was her entire world. And so what happened is I would date guys and they would like me so much. And it would feel like, oh no, I'm your entire world.
Totally.
And I had I needed space from that as a kid. Totally. And so when guys liked me too much, it felt like that.
Totally. 100%.
And so I was drawn to guys who didn't like me very much.
Yes.
Which also was very crazy.
100%. Well, it's like that thing. It's like that thing, especially you see this in girls a lot, where it's like, oh, I'm attracted to the bad boy who treats me like crap. And the reason I am is because fundamentally, my entire life, I've been trying to prove through my attachment system that I can win love.
Yes.
And if I can get the person, probably because a primary caregiver didn't give me enough attachment, didn't meet my needs enough. If I can get this person who's unavailable to think that I'm wonderful, to love me, then I am proving to myself that I actually am worth loving. The problem is that when that person actually starts to attach in, I suddenly lose interest.
Absolutely. Because so our attachment system is the way that we connect to the people who are most important in our lives. Yeah. And then it's combined with our nervous system and our bodies. And so our bodies have a lot of reactions beyond what our mind is saying about who we should attach to. So I can literally start to, if you become safe in how you're relating to me, if you love me and I've won you and you actually are securely attaching to me, but my body and nervous system is used to being on edge. Like we get used to the addiction cycle of like, I'm gonna be honest here. I can get so hooked in attachment cycles with people who don't want to attach to me, and then they attach to me a little bit, and then they don't want to attach to me, and then they attach to me a little bit. And what it does is it creates an addiction, a high. Like every time you get the connection that you want, you feel like the top of the world.
Oh, it is. And really what's happening is it is a intense dopamine rush.
Yes.
So when I finally win that person and they pay attention to me, I feel amazing. I feel great. I feel...
Because not only have I won your connection for the moment, I've won my childhood trauma for the moment. That's how it feels.
Yeah.
You feel like you finally are good enough.
Yep.
You finally have the thing that you've been looking for your whole life.
Yep. Totally.
And then,
dun, dun, dun.
They pull away.
Yep.
And you feel on edge again. And that feels so normal.
Yep.
Like when somebody...
Well, you hit a high and you spiral the minute... And this is the reverse, because sometimes you come in and then the minute they start attaching to you, then you withdraw. Or what can happen is you seek someone and then they pay attention to you, but then they start to withdraw again. And when they start to withdraw again, you go from a high to a low. And that low doesn't always look like depression. Sometimes that looks like anxiety.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times it does, where you're riddled with like, are they going to call me? Are they going to, why did they look at me like that? You start to second guess everything.
And you start to go into hypervigilance, which is looking at every behavior they're doing to try to prove how they feel about you. So you're like, they only texted me once. They normally text me 3 times. Or they didn't text me good morning this morning. And so does that mean that they're not as interested? Yeah. And there's, and body wise, once we get into the state of feeling, like we might feel, I know with Justin, like maybe he just is really engaged and then he gets distracted by something. Yeah. We can just feel that little energy shift. Our bodies feel just that little energy shift. And as soon as we feel just that little bit of removal, if we have any kind of attachment pain,
which most of us do,
our bodies just with that little bit of removing energy. Like maybe his energy is focused on me and then his energy is withdrawn.
Yes.
Sometimes maybe he's like really listening to me and connected, and then he thinks about something that he needs to remember and he goes inside of himself to try to think through that thing. But I can just feel a little bit of that lack. Then my body goes on to alert.
100%. And depending on how vulnerable you are in the interaction or the relationship is how far you'll spiral out.
Yeah.
You know, like the more vulnerable you are, the more dependent on them you are, the more vulnerable you are in like maybe putting your heart out there or feeling dependent on them.
Yeah.
The more it tends to spiral you out on the back end. And really what happens is when somebody turns away like that, you know, that low and that place where we go to, it is like ruminating. It's like constant. It's like a cycle of like OCD. Yep, yeah, totally.
How do I get this back? What do I do? How do I solve this? And we do one of two things. We either blame them, like they're the worst. Why don't they care about me?
Yep.
Or we blame ourselves, like what do I need to do to be perfect so that this cycle never happens again?
Yep.
And then you ultimately find a way to reconnect. You have another connection point.
Yep.
And you feel that high again. And you get hooked.
Oh, yeah.
Once you've had a couple high highs and low lows with people.
Oh, yeah.
Most of our attachment systems are then, and it, to me, it doesn't have to be, when I say a low, I don't feel like I have to like have Justin completely ignore me and have me spiral to the depths of my soul. Like a low could be like, he's just internal for a day.
Yes.
And I feel that disconnection. And then I start to get self-conscious of myself.
Yeah, totally. Or even like for me with Johnny, there would be times where, you know, even just him being in an emotional funk would trigger abandonment for me.
Yeah.
And it would spiral me out where I start getting anxious and I start getting nervous and I start ruminating like, did I do something? And he's quiet, right? And I can't. And whenever someone is quiet, because the brain is a survival brain and it's made for war.
Yep.
When there is not words, the brain will take silence and fill in the blanks and it will always be worst case scenario.
Absolutely.
Always. You know? And so then him like, oh, he's feeling something would feel threatening to me.
Yes.
Because it's the removal of love. And a lot of times for us, like for a lot of people and people that I work with, like, you know, if you had one parent who had really big emotions who couldn't tend to your emotional needs or was overtaken by their emotional state in some way, it feels very threatening when your partner then starts to have emotions, because for you on an attachment level, that did mean abandonment.
Totally.
That did mean mom or dad isn't present or isn't going to pay attention to me. And some people lived in that state.
Totally.
So like even that anxiety, it's very real and it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
You know,
I was thinking about how narrating has literally changed my life with silence. Because I was thinking, I have several friends who are avoidants. So they can pull into themselves.
Yeah. When they feel unsafe in the relationship, they withdraw. They back away. They go quiet. They kind of withdraw from the relationship.
Or also in life, they also just go inside themselves
they go
to
inward.
get safe. So it doesn't even have to be if they feel threatened with me, because a lot of times Justin or my other friends will be processing something in life.
Yes.
It's not even about me.
Totally.
And so what we've learned to do is like, hey, it feels like you feel a little disconnected or you feel something, what's going on? And I would say, honestly, for my world, like 80% of the time, they're like, oh, I'm processing this thing, or I'm feeling anxiety about this thing, or and it often has nothing to do with me. But that silence feels so terrifying.
Oh, it's so terrifying.
That we end up, like you said, your brain is made for war. So when there's silence, you fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
And the blanks are that you're the worst and that you're the reason, and everything's going to be turned against you.
Yep, totally. And oftentimes, like for people who run more anxious and are anxious attachment, and that means when they feel unsafe in life, they lean towards connection. They are proximity seeking. They want to be close to their home. And really attachment, when we're talking about it, it's like your home base. It's like the thing that sets you up to move throughout the world. Like when your home base is secure. So like, I know that back home, I have a husband who loves me and I have a best friend who loves me. And knowing that and having those people in my life allows me to have enough energy and resources resource to move throughout the world. But if one of those relationships is off with my core people or my core person, suddenly I'm not okay.
Right.
In some way. And so, for anxious people, when they feel unsafe, and they're proximity seeking and they're moving towards relationship, they can even do things like, okay, let's say an avoidant is, quiet all day, but nothing's really wrong with their relationship. Maybe they just have a lot on their mind, or they're having a stressful moment and they get into bed, and oftentimes you'll see like anxious attachers. They're the one who like it's 12 o'clock at night and suddenly they're like, we need to talk about the relationship.
Totally. Because they waited all day and their anxiety was building. Yep. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what to do. And all of a sudden they need to figure it out right now because the anxiety is too big now.
100%. Like we call them people in waiting because they're often like, are my needs going to get met? And they don't know how to get their needs met in a healthy way. They don't know, they don't sometimes have that healthy self-entitlement where they know how to say something when they need to. And they also don't know how to have internal boundaries with themselves and learn how to have that self-restraint. And so they tend to be people in waiting. So they get to the end of the night and, they're like,
I've been waiting all day.
And then what happens is goodbyes for any kind of separation for an anxious is going to cause a lot of anxiety. So even going to bed, if we have
a goodbye.
Yep. So as I'm building up to bedtime, I'm starting to build an anxiety
because we're about to say goodbye,
and I don't feel connected. I don't know if we're good. I don't feel connected. And if I feel connected, then I feel safe to say goodbye. But if I don't, then I'm going to come up with a reason even to start a fight to get connection with you. And I do it subconsciously and don't even realize.
Totally.
Like
we actually want to get to the connection point, and sometimes the only way we know how to do that is to go through a fight.
100%. We use it as a way of finding that connection that we can't figure out how to get.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And on the flip side, for people like avoidance, the withdrawalers, or the people that go inward, it can be incredibly stressful to come into connection. So, for the anxious, it's really stressful to separate. For the avoidant, it can be really stressful to come in to connection, to come into. These people are oftentimes people who need a little bit of a transition time to come from alone time into being with people, and so they'll even find they tend to sometimes avoidance can be kind of secretive because I don't know how to get my needs met in a healthy way. And I don't know how to have my healthy self-entitlement to say, oh, this is what I need. Right. So I just kind of sneak off and I'll be on my phone or I'll sneak off. And people then, you pair that with someone like an anxious and their mind is going to the worst case scenario. Like, are you having an affair? And really they're just sitting in their car eating donuts. Because they're like, I just need a moment by myself to scroll on my phone and eat a donut,
Yes.
So it's like a very fascinating, cyclical, dynamic we can get into.
Basically what happens is anxious people feel unsafe when there's space.
Yeah.
So they lean in. Avoidants feel unsafe when too much is being pulled from them.
Yep.
So they lean out.
Yep.
And so then the anxious leans in more, the avoidant leans out more.
Yep.
And you just keep circling where the anxious keeps feeling like I'm not going to get my needs met, and the avoidant keeps feeling like I'm not going to get my needs met.
Totally.
And it just becomes a circle.
Totally. And the funny thing even about anxious people sometimes too is we laugh about this too, is like they're anxious ambivalent. So they're really, really anxious. But then sometimes when you pay attention to them,
it's too much.
They're like, they act like they don't care. Oh, it's like they're the people that are like, come rescue me in the tower. And you do all the work to rescue them in the tower. And they're like, the knight in shining armor is like, I'm here. And they're like, yeah, you're kind of late and I really don't care. You're like, I just went through all this work to gain relationship, but it's a self-protective mechanism.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
It's self-protection because it's saying, hey, if I show you how much I care, that's scary. If I let you affect me this much, that's really scary.
Yeah.
And so being in relationships sometimes with them can feel really confusing because oftentimes you'll hear other people on the other side be like, I don't feel like I can do anything right.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because I feel like they can't, you know?
So let's talk about you and Johnny. What are you?
So, well, here's the beautiful thing about me is I have been all the attachment styles. And here's the like interesting thing about attachment is that typically there's one kind of like rooted style within you. Like I would say I'm rooted in anxious actually, but attachment can shift throughout your life depending on the situation
the season and the person
and the relationships you're in. Even like I could have one attachment style with Johnny and a different attachment style with you depending on our dynamic.
100%. I have a best friend who's anxious attachment and a best friend who's avoidant. And with the anxious best friend, I'm more avoidant.
Yes.
And with the avoidant best friend, I'm more anxious. And it has to do with how they interact, then can pull me into different categories.
They can pull you into different categories. So like I would say growing up, I had a lot of secure. Here's the thing. When we say this, it doesn't mean this is a defining thing about you.
Yeah, I have a lot of us.
Yeah,
so
there's
I think
parts.
Like, there's part of me that is an anxious attacher, and then there's part of me that can secure attach.
Yeah.
And then there's part of me that's avoidant.
Yeah. And really those secure.
And there's part of me that goes into disorganized.
Oh, 100%.
Yep.
I'm all of them. Like there's a lot of me that's secure. So I'm okay with having distance in the relationship. I'm okay with being close in the relationship. I know how to have healthy self-entitlement and set boundaries. And I also know how to be flexible and give where I need to. There's a lot of me in a lot of my relationships that way. I also can be really anxious, and I have been really anxious and riddled with anxiety.
Can feel really hard, and disconnection can feel overwhelming.
Yep, and I could spiral into an abandonment melange because I have so much abandonment fear there.
Oh, totally.
You know, and then there's been seasons where I've been incredibly avoidant. Like in the beginning of my relationship with my husband, and we laugh about this all the time because as a teenager and a young adult, I was like a quintessential avoidant. Like the avoidance that you kind of are like a little like, okay, interesting. Because I would be so critical of people as a self-protective mechanism to push people away.
Oh, you were so critical.
I was really critical. I would find ways to like pick people apart
down.
so that I could create distance between me and another person.
Yeah, because connection felt so scary.
It felt so scary. And I didn't know how to be vulnerable. And I didn't know how to feel safe with vulnerability. And I had huge walls up. And I used criticism to distance myself, or I'd find something wrong with you know, Johnny or someone I was with or romantically interested in.
So me.
Or you.
Friendships.
I've had to clean up a lot of messes in my life, you know. But really it was just self-protection because I was so terrified of intimacy, and I was terrified of being consumed by a relationship. Yeah. I was terrified of being consumed by someone, so like, that's why with Johnny, like the minute it started to get serious, we're on this like 3-week family vacation to Disney.
You break up with him.
And I break up with him an hour or like a week into the 3-week trip. Abby was there. She knows. Abby and my mom cornered me and were like, you need to figure out something with this relationship because you are a jerk.
Well, because you were being so cold and mean to him.
Oh, I was. The poor man. I have put this man through. Lord Jesus, help me. I plead the fifth. But I was an avoidant. And then after we got married, and I've talked about this several times on the podcast, but I did kind of pull it together, and that's where I think you see some healthy attachment inside of me, because once I decided to commit, I really put myself out there and worked on some stuff. But unfortunately,
right after
we got married, I went through an attachment crisis because my entire world kind of blew up, like a ministry that I was building, my community, my sense of safety, where I finally put my walls down and felt like my authentic self, it kind of blew up, and I lost it very much blew up. And I lost most of my secure attachments in that season.
And this is one of the things that I feel sad. We've both read lots of books. I don't think that on attachment.
Yeah.
I don't think that in the books that I've read, they've acknowledged the broader attachment circle as much as I wish that they would, because I have not been affected just by my primary attachments.
I agree.
To me, and nobody's really talking about that. And that's frustrating for me, because if I want a friend to listen to this thing about attachment, it's always about your primary person, and that's it.
And it's always a romantic partner, but your attachment system is made up of several primary attachments.
Yes.
You know?
And even like in your case, so there were several primary attachments that you lost in the attachment crisis you went through, but there was just layers of attachments. Like they weren't like you lost like 100 people in your world.
Yeah.
In one
fell swoop. Yeah.
And so that is still an attachment crisis. It's not,
it wasn't like I went through a divorce, but losing, and that's often where we go, oh, that person's in an attachment crisis because they're divorced, which is very much, anytime you get divorced, you're going to go through an attachment crisis.
An affair, a divorce, a church split, friendship group split.
Yeah.
Any kind of thing where there's separation with people that you're really close to.
Yep.
But then there's also just that, like what I'm saying, that broader, like if you all of a sudden leave a church and get kicked out, or if all of a sudden your family breaks apart, it might be people that you wouldn't have considered your primary attachments. But if you lose enough attachments at once, it can trigger the same thing as losing primary.
Well, yeah. And so for me, what that did is after that happened, and then of course I go to Johnny for comfort, but we're so young. We didn't know anything about trauma. We didn't know anything about anything. Yeah. We were literally kids, you know, and he didn't know what to do with this wife who's in grief, who's in trauma, who's falling apart, who's having PTSD reactions. So then I went into disorganized attachment in my relationship with him. And disorganized attachment, they're like what we call like the hurricanes. Because it's like, I hate you, don't leave me. It's very
like, I need you, but also I'm going to push you away. It's like a push and a pull at the same time.
Yep.
Like I can't let down my guard enough to tell you I just need you.
Yes.
Because it's too vulnerable.
Yes.
And also if you do a little bit of something that feels like rejection, my wall comes up to smack you out.
Oh, 100% smack you out. But I need you.
So
don't go too far.
I don't need you to go too far, but I need to push you away.
Yeah.
To let you know that you hurt me.
And in some ways, I feel sad in the attachment world because I think sometimes some of the thought around, disorganized attachment, I'm like, being someone who's been in disorganized attachment before, it is probably one of the scariest feelings you can go through.
It is hell.
Because you can't figure out if people are safe and you know, or if they will destroy you. And you know that you need them. Yes. But you have been so hurt. And so you don't know what to do with them. And that feeling, because attachment is biologically programmed, wired inside of us.
Yes.
We can't escape it. So you can't escape your need for people.
Totally.
But you have been so hurt that it becomes like a torture chamber in some ways.
Absolutely.
You know? That I think, you know, it's important to recognize that someone's who's in that disorganized attachment state. And really one of the characteristics is they're incredibly unpredictable. You don't know if you confront them and they blow up on you and freak out on you, or if they'll get really soft and lean in, and you could get either one.
Yes.
You don't know how they're going to be in an interaction. And so typically then what's hard about being in disorganized attachment is that people become more afraid of you. And then
what you need the most is for people to like lean in and help you.
Yep.
Like help you regulate.
Yep.
And help you feel safe.
And be consistent.
You need like that steadiness. But people don't, it's like half the time you're a porcupine, half the time you're a little kid that's holding them.
Yep.
And they don't know what to do with that. And so they just kind of like, they freeze around you.
Oh, 100%. They freeze, or they get completely dysregulated for good reason. Yeah. You know, for good reason. It's a complicated dynamic.
Well, when I'm in disorganized attachment, and I like that we're talking about this because one of the things I've been sad about, I don't love all of the ways that attachment is taught.
I agree with you.
I haven't found one book that I'm like, this feels like it captures it the way that that I believe from all the pieces.
I feel like we like have a mosaic,
a hodgepodge of
attachment things that we've like, and our work with like people
that
we've understood so much because we've seen it play out, you know?
So it was hard for me to acknowledge I had disorganized attachment because they kind of say it's like the worst. And I didn't want to be like, I can do that. Now,
there's a lot of shame in admitting it. There can feel like there's a lot of shame in admitting that, you know? Yeah.
Now, what I would say is I think disorganized attachment is the most connected to trauma.
Yeah.
And so that felt easier when I let go of it being like, you're the most effed up, you're the most broken, and I went to looking at it as this is a result of me experiencing a lot of trauma.
Yep.
It was easier for me to gulp that.
Yes.
For me, when I go into disorganized attachment, it's a very felt sense in my body. Like it's a body experience and it's a thought experience. And the way I describe it is it's like I go into like a black hole on the inside and I can't remember love or safety, the feeling of love or safety. And
that's exactly what it feels like.
Cannot figure out how, like I'll be sitting there. Let's say that I was in disorganized attachment with you. I'm not right now, but let's just say I would be so trapped inside because I'd be like, I know I need her to love me.
Yes.
But I actually have and for me, sometimes I will have tried, for me, before I get into disorganized attachment, I often try to communicate my needs with people before that point.
There's usually, me too. There's usually a moment where I tried to do it healthy, the best that I could conjure up and the best that I could.
I normally try like 3 or 4 times to do it in a healthy way.
Yep. And if someone doesn't respond well, thing after thing, then eventually you get to a threshold where you go over
and then it goes, yes.
Yep.
And then I'm like, all I need is for you to come close and love me. I am angry at you for not doing it.
Yeah.
I also am angry at me for being porcupiney.
Yeah.
I also need help. Like in disorganized attachment, I can't get out of it without having some ability to reconnect to love.
Yes.
And so it feels so out of control and so vulnerable.
Yes.
And there isn't a clear path. That's the thing that feels the most hopeless to me when I'm in disorganized attachment is like, if I cry to you, like I still have my edges up. So like I've tried being vulnerable in disorganized attachment, but people feel my edges still. So they don't want to soften.
So then their guards go up, but then you feel that and that feels scary and unsafe.
And that's exactly
because also
the opposite
people
of what
treating you like you're scary is the worst thing when you're in disorganized attachment, even though you are scary.
Yeah. It's like, but it is such a pain point. And for me, but this, in our marriage, I've gone into disorganized attachment a lot of times.
Yeah.
And that has been very complicated for Justin because he doesn't know if I'm safe or not.
Yeah.
And when somebody's saying, please love me, but they feel like a porcupine, it feels really hard to know how to love them because that's you needing to get over your own attachment fears.
Totally.
To be able to meet them where they're at.
Totally. And that's a complicated thing to do because anything in real time, the brain is automatic and
wired for war.
Yep. It's just coming in with like the nervous system is coming in with automatic responses and self-protection and fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, you know?
Totally.
And so it becomes a complicated thing. And oftentimes people who like this scenario that we're describing, because you can live in low grade disorganized attachment and then you can have like a disorganized attachment swirl.
Yeah.
Or
disorganized attachment episode. That's what it is like for me.
It's more like an episode.
I am often not in disorganized attachment.
Totally.
But if you get enough triggers in a row for me, it can flip the switch. It also feels like a PTSD episode for me. And that would make sense because I have attachment trauma.
Yeah.
So I went through a season where I lost all of my primary attachments, including Justin, except for you.
Yeah.
And what that did was it shook something so deep in the core of my being that you could trust any relational connection or that love couldn't be gone. Like it was like all the lights got turned out in my life. And what that did is it enabled me to then have fear that all of the lights could get turned off.
Yep.
And I don't ever think I'll go through something like that again logically. Like
totally.
There's no way. It was the perfect storm.
It was the perfect storm.
And it's unbelievable.
It was like so much trauma all hit at once.
If you actually hear how it happened, It's unbelievable. And there's so many things that if it would have gone just 1 degree different, I wouldn't have gone into
changed the trajectory of
I
a lot
wouldn't
of
have gone
things.
into a huge attachment crisis. Like just
Totally.
just a few things. But what it did is it made it so, and I think a lot of people have experiences like that. A lot of people, like they lost their mom or their dad suddenly, or they went through a church split that they didn't see coming, or they had a friend betray them. Like I know people that like lose a best friend and it's like a couple years of them processing through.
The deeper the person is, like the more connected you are to the person, the deeper the attachment crisis will be. The bigger the attachment crisis will be. Yeah, I should say, you know, because the more that person added to my secure base, right? And if I have that secure base, then I feel like oftentimes people who are secure attachers, it's because they had a very secure base. They did. They just had a very secure base.
Which would be like what?
Would be like 2 parents who knew how to give them attunement, who knew how to meet their needs, also knew how to help them set boundaries, knew how to give them interpersonal boundaries, people that were consistently there, people that, or caregivers that didn't emotionally incest. So they felt big in themselves. They weren't relying on the child in any way to carry that. They also knew how to narrate to the child what was going on in a stressful moment so that the child, because oftentimes when kids don't understand what's happening, they take it on as like, I did something wrong.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so even that can cause like, okay, how do I become a good kid so that mom and dad don't leave me and I'm not in trouble? Like so much of this is subconscious programming. And when I have that solidified in place, it gives me the framework to know how to set up a healthy relationship. Yeah. You know, but oftentimes when we don't have that in place and we go into insecure attachment, we will choose people and situations. Sometimes we'll seek them out because it's what feels normal to us.
It feels safe and it feels normal and we're trying to resolve it. Yeah. So I will find a relationship modeled after something I grew up with because that feels familiar.
Yes.
And I often say like, I think this is how me and Justin chose each other. Like
totally.
There are a lot of reasons I'm glad I chose him.
Absolutely.
And there was logic involved. There's a lot of core values he has that has made him safe. And that's why our marriage has worked.
Totally.
Is because of those core values. And I'm glad I picked them. But looking back, I can see both of our attachment systems felt like I said when I met him, I was like, you feel like home to me. Like it was like within 5 minutes of
that is
talking.
So common because it's literally, and this is actually scientific. We are attracted to something in someone that feels like home.
Yes.
We are attracted to someone that reminds us of our home base. And even though they could look completely different.
Oh yeah. I thought he was the opposite of both my parents.
Totally. 100%.
But I was like, you just feel like home. And then
totally
as time went on, we were like, oh, you are the dysfunctions of my home. You are the dysregulated energy of my home. You are the emotional chaos of my home.
Missing puzzle piece inside of me that I know how to I know how to adapt to this. This feels good to me because it feels familiar.
Yeah. And I can figure out the system around it.
I can figure out the system. So I know how to keep love here with this dysfunction, only it doesn't really work.
Totally.
You know? But the thing is that I think what you were saying is so true, is that there isn't a lot in psychology right now or in the understanding of attachment theory about how our community makes up that secure base, not just our romantic partners, our community, our friends, our family, extended family, coworkers, and our jobs can make up that secure base.
Oh yeah.
You know?
So if I'm going through something with Justin, but I have a small group of we meet together in a small group of girls and I feel really supported by them, then I don't have to go into an attachment crisis because of what's going on with Justin.
I can pull on my other secure base in order to get my needs met.
Yes.
However, if I'm struggling with my husband and then maybe I'm struggling in my friendships or I don't have that secure base right now, or I have a few friends that I'm having conflict with.
Yeah.
That is enough to completely send someone into an attachment crisis.
Yes.
You know?
So and I think that's something that this has given me a lot of compassion for myself to understand the idea that when you have a couple main attachments in your life that fall through, that change it doesn't even have to be that horrible. It could be like one of your main attachment moves. And so you talk to them less.
Totally.
It could be that that your job changes. And so your attachment there changes. It doesn't have to be friendships ending, but if you have too many things that affect
all
attachments. So I know somebody who went through an attachment crisis. They moved and then they had one friendship change. That sent them into an attachment crisis. And not because that one friendship even was that deep or that close to them, but it was because they had already lost so many friends. Like, not lost, they were still friends with everyone that they moved away from. They just didn't have people there in person that they could depend on.
And that's a big deal. I had a client who had trouble in her marriage, ended up cutting her mom out for various reasons that she felt like she needed to. And it was probably the right thing to do for a little bit, take space. And then ended up having deep conflict with her best friend.
Oh, and that's too much.
It was too much. And you just see, like, there's just so much compassion I have, because I'm like, it's like, it literally is. That's why we call them hurricanes, because it feels like having a hurricane where you don't know what is up and what is down and what's safe and what's not, you know, but just enough things to tip it over the edge and you're in an attachment crisis, you know? You've lost your sense of safety.
And I think, and that's what it is. An attachment crisis, there's several things. You've lost your sense of safety. Like, I have a pretty strong sense of self. Here's a great way when I know when I'm in an attachment pain, my natural personality disappears. So like, in real life, I'm actually pretty flexible. And I'm pretty
that's a
easygoing.
Great point.
I'm pretty flexible and I'm pretty easygoing, and I'm down to have fun. And I don't take things too personally. That's pretty common for solid me. So solid me, if you show up late, that doesn't actually hurt my feelings. I'm like, thank God I have a few extra minutes. Like, that's what
you're
my
resilient.
normal personality is.
You're flexible. You can adapt well.
Or if you're like, hey, I need to change plans. I'm like, okay, yeah, totally. Let's change plans. Let's do it the next week. That's totally fine. Or if you're like, oh, you know, I said I wanted to do this, but what if we do this instead? Those things are normal for me, for my personality. I just go with the flow.
Totally.
When I'm in an attachment pain or crisis, those things start to feel like threats.
High stakes.
They start to feel like, and so then this person that I'm not comes out, which is like, oh, I actually need someone to be on time for me to know if I matter. I actually need for this to for us to follow through with our plans, because I need to know that there's something that I can count on. And I can't count on all these other things. So I need to know that there is something that I can count on. And maybe you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I just thought I was type A my whole life. But really, it's that you have attachment panic. And so what you're using is like, if you're on time and our plans go the way I thought they would,
I can count on that.
I can count on that.
I can count on that. I know that it's going to be there. I know you're going to be there. But really, when that shifts a little bit, that rigid thinking is because I have so much anxiety on the inside, and that threat response is so big because I've been through trauma, you know, and that's really at the heart of that disorganized attachment style. Like you said, is typically a lot of trauma. Or even some trauma. You know what I'm saying? Like, even what we're saying, sometimes it doesn't take a lot. You know, you get someone with a sensitive nervous system and you get them in just the right situation. And, you know, even I have seen people who are perfectly reasonable people, great people, awesome people, go through divorce and become almost psychotic. Literally. And I have so much compassion for them. But that's what happens to the attachment system. You know, it could just be a divorce. And literally you see someone who does not look the same at all. Looks and very scary.
Completely different decisions.
Have a different value system. Move throughout the world completely differently. You know?
Because I think attachments are like one of our most primal reactions. So like now, if I was to describe, most of my trauma in life is around attachment pain. And I think attachment pain is the most like hell that you experience on earth.
100%.
Like because what I think hell is separation from love.
Yeah. And all of us have a fundamental need to feel loved and to belong.
Yeah. To feel loved and
accepted.
It's fundamental. It's primary. It's instinctual. Our bodies are like, I need
We're wired
to belong.
For it.
We are actually wired to need to have somebody that we belong to. And I would say even more than somebody, I would say many people that we belong to.
I agree. But usually if we can have at least one person, we can make it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But I think we have more needs outside of that because oftentimes just one person, that's a lot on the one person.
It's a lot on the one person.
But yeah, we need that. And again, when that gets taken away, it shakes our entire sense of not just safety, but who we are.
Yes.
And where we belong and if we matter at all. You know?
That's why I wanted to talk about a little bit about attachment crisis because a lot of people have gone through something like that.
Yeah.
You lose a best friend and you don't know why that whole 2 years is so painful.
Oh my gosh.
And you feel like I should be able to get over this. It's just a friend. It's whatever. But it's like wired in your body that is how you feel safe.
I know.
And then you have, but so once you've gone through an attachment crisis, and like we said, there's so many different ways it could happen. What happens is you're extra sensitive for however many years it takes until you can reestablish a new network of secure attachments.
Yes.
So until you have stability inside of your attachments, and it doesn't mean you have to have secure attachment in every relationship,
but you have enough that you feel secure, you know,
like you actually. And so what happens is people who've gone through something like a divorce or somebody cheated on them or somebody, when they feel like they could be losing someone again, when they feel like someone could be lying to them again, when they feel like somebody could be frustrated at them, when they feel anything that reminds them of the feelings they had before the attachment crisis, they start to have huge emotions that feel overwhelming. I have a friend right now who's, they went through a divorce. It was really painful. They worked out, like they walked out of it. It was an attachment crisis, very devastating, painful, built a new community, built safety, found new people, and then got into another relationship that brought up the deep attachment pain.
Yep. Because separation brings up issues. Getting close brings up issues.
Yes.
Yeah.
Both things. And so then when they started feeling the pain, it ended up creating a couple ripples in other relationships. So then they started having a little bit of pain with a friend and with this guy. And what that did is that brought up all of their pain from their divorce.
Yeah.
And you can feel them being flooded by the attachment. Like it feels so high stakes.
Yes.
And the hardest thing is knowing if I could be outside of this moment, I could totally give reassurance to my friends who feel like, what's going on?
Totally.
And how's this going to work out? And I could be like, it's going to be fine.
Totally.
But when you're in it,
it's exactly how you described. I describe it as I feel like I'm locked in a cage and I can't access love, like connection or love with people. And I can't figure out how to get out because I feel like I'm being kept here. Yeah. You know, and that's really what it is.
And I feel like there's like 3 different paths I can try to get out, but they will all keep me here. That's how I feel.
That's how it feels.
There's I could try this. I could try being vulnerable. I could try having a need. I could try getting angry. I could try picking a fight, and none of them will get me out of this cage.
Totally. 100%. And oftentimes, like when people get to that level of escalation, it's funny because even though they feel trapped, how they'll show up is a lot of what we call external regulation, where it's just one-sided. They're just venting. And they're angry and because what they're trying to do is they're trying to offload that anesthetic load that has built up so much.
You're just saying a lot of blah, blah, blah to me.
What?
You're using a lot of words. Let's go into, explain it maybe in simpler terms. Let's not talk about anesthetic loads.
Anesthetic load.
Yes.
Sure. So they're so high in their nervous system.
Who is high?
The person in disorganized attachment tends to be so high in their nervous system because what it feels like when you get that high in your nervous system, when you're in disorganized attachment, that way, it feels like being on a roller coaster that you can't get off of.
Yeah. Totally.
That's going out of control so fast.
Yeah.
You know, so typically a lot of times for these people, especially the way that they show up relationally, like with friends or relationally with a spouse or a significant other, is they look like they are just angry word blasting you, angry throwing up on you, angry attacking you. And it's because they feel so scared on the inside that pushing away and that trying to get the words out is the way that they're trying to bring themselves back down. And then when they bring themselves back down, the cage opens up.
Yes.
But they can't figure out.
They get so wound up in their body from the intensity that they are experiencing. The way that they release it feels crazy to other people.
Yeah.
But then they actually can come down in their body. They can get back to a regulated place and then they can talk through things.
Yep. And so then they move into like the hope would be that they could move into like what is called co-regulation, where they can go back and forth having a conversation and they become more reasonable. And you'll see it as they come down in their nervous system, their personality starts to show up a little bit more and they don't look like the crazy person but what they need in that situation is someone who's not afraid, who can lean in, and also someone who will put up boundaries when they need to, even though that can be really hard. But that's the hard thing, is that what's happening inside of them is the stress level and the fear level and the threat level is so
intense,
big that is where they're trying to figure out something. They have to get it out of their body. And typically that comes through, I'm going to say a ton of things and it's going to come out threatening and attacking and really harsh. And then they feel shame about it. Typically when they come down from it and they feel like themselves, the shame that hits is really big.
Which you have called me before and telling me this exact thing where you've like lost it at Johnny.
Oh, totally. Like I just got tipped over the edge and completely lost it. Went into disorganized attachment. And when I come down from it, I'm like, I feel so much shame.
Totally.
Like, I can't believe I said those things. I can't believe I yelled like that. I can't believe I treated him that way, you know? And then what happens is that if it feels like there's shame from another person about it, it can spin you back up.
Yeah. Because you're like, I'm overwhelmed.
That threat. And so they just need so much love and so much nurture, you know, which is hard.
Yeah.
You know,
I think that, we need to wrap this up, but there's two things I was thinking of. One, I thought I would tell this story because I think I can now look back. There's several times that I went into disorganized attachment when I was younger.
Totally.
I wasn't in it all the time, but there were some times, and it kind of feels like sharp edges on the inside.
Oh,
for me. Like it feels painful on the inside to be me.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to be with me either.
Totally.
But I remember we went on a girls' trip.
Me,
you, and two other girls, and we went to California from Colorado, and I don't even know what happened. Something
triggered,
and it would be something. You know, I had to move schools every 2 years. My mom did that to me. Made it so that I moved schools every 2 years. So I think there was this deep sense of like needing to not feel like I'm on the outside. Like there's some panic around if I feel like I'm not in the group.
I think a lot of girls can relate to that too.
Yes.
You know, that dynamic of I'm in a group of girls and am I safe here?
Yes.
You know?
Oh yeah. The feeling of being on the outside of a group is one of the worst feelings on the planet.
Yes.
It feels so good to feel in the group.
Yes.
And it feels so
bad.
miserable. What I've noticed is if I feel on the outside of a group for long enough, it can send me into disorganized attachment.
Totally.
And I think anyone it'd be like that for. But so something happened that made me feel like I was on the outside. I didn't belong. And that feeling, obviously I couldn't narrate back then. I didn't understand to just say like, hey, I'm feeling on the outside, or I'm feeling something. I didn't even know that's what I was feeling probably. And then I just subconsciously went into walling off, and I got like a little bit edgy and sharp, and then also a little bit removed. Like I pulled back in a lot of ways. What was it like for you?
Well, it was an interesting thing for me. Obviously, I knew nothing about attachment back then because I was like, woohoo, girls trip. And I have like this real like lighthearted fun part of me where I'm like, ladies, let's do this. Let's live it up. But then something happened and I don't even know what it was, but I remember all of a sudden, like you were cold and withdrawn and quiet. And I remember thinking like, and we'd invite you like, Abby, do you want to go do this with us? And you're like, no, I'm good. And I was like, I feel like I've done something, but I don't know what it is.
Totally.
And I feel like she just wants to be left alone.
Right. And
You know?
you guys separated more and more because you're like, I don't know what's happening. And even a shame feeling of like, did we do something wrong? And
totally.
then feeling like I didn't do anything wrong.
Totally.
Though, you know?
Totally. And confusion. Like, what is going on? Like, I cannot figure this out. Like, what happened?
Totally.
You know?
And my nervous system, if somebody like leaned in a little bit,
that's what you needed.
Would have helped.
It would have
there was no
helped.
way. I was at that point. There's no way I could be vulnerable enough.
Yeah.
Because even if I would have been vulnerable enough to say like I need help, if somebody wouldn't have responded well, it would have like
completely spiraled you. Totally, 100%.
That's what attachment trauma feels like.
Yeah,
where you're like, I really need help.
Yeah,
I really need love.
Yes,
I really need connection.
Yep,
I'm locked inside myself.
Well, and that's what it's like after you go through an attachment crisis is you're so vulnerable that it feels like you literally are walking around naked all the time. Like either people are judging you or will they love, and it's so high pressure because you feel like your guts are out. So everything becomes so high stakes.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Which is really difficult in a relationship. I think one of the good things and one of the most beautiful things to me about attachment trauma and even attachment crisis, because we've both been through them, is that people have the power to hurt us, but they also have the power to heal us. And the cool thing about attachment is that even if you had a really effed up childhood where you had horrible attachment, you are not subjected to that attachment style and that trauma the rest of your life.
Yes.
Even your current relationships can heal past wounds.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, the thing is that when you start to experience love, or connection, it actually reestablishes the thing that was broken inside of you. You start to notice that you can feel like yourself again. Even on that trip, what ended up happening is I did meet someone that I felt really loved by on that trip. That helped anchor me back to love. And then eventually when we got back from the trip, I was able to be around a few people that I felt really loved by.
Yeah. And it kind of like brought you back.
It brought me down. It brought me back to myself and I have used this pathway in other areas in my life. If I have pain with one person in my life, attachment, I will go to another source. Like maybe if me and Justin are having connection issues, I will call you.
Totally.
Because I know that I feel safe. I know that you love me. I know that you're with me. I know that you're going to be there. And it's not like you're my savior for my marriage.
No.
What I'm doing is I'm returning to a place where
you feel love and connection.
That if I can feel safe with you, I can let down my guards and then I can feel, I can let down my guards again.
Yes.
And then I can actually return back to people and be able to communicate in a regulated, normal way.
Yes.
So then we got back. I was around people I felt loved by. I got reconnected to love. I came out of the dark cage.
Yeah.
Back into love. And what that did is allowed me to then be able to come back to you guys and then talk through things.
Yeah.
And work through it.
Yep. And that's exactly like what needs to happen. And it's one of the best things you can do if you're in an attachment crisis is find people that feel safe and recognize you probably are going to come in with high expectations because you're scared.
And you want them to meet all of your needs and be the safest person there ever was and prove that they will never hurt you.
Yep. But really, if you can go in with the intent of this person isn't going to fill all of the holes in my heart right now because there's a lot of holes and there's a deep hole, but maybe they just fill it just a little bit.
Yes. And that's what I've actually looked for because I had an attachment crisis with so many attachments. What I've looked for is how to have a bunch of different little attachments to start to fill in the hole.
Totally.
And that's exactly how I see it. And I see like, there's somebody that I can text when I need to. That fills in a little bit of the space. There's somebody that when I see them, they're excited to see me. That fills in a little bit of the space.
Yeah.
There's somebody that wants to be with me even when I'm in pain. That fills in a little bit of the space.
Yep.
And I started and it takes a while after an attachment crisis. I'd say both me and you, it's taken years. They were big attachment crises.
They were really big attachment crises.
I think it's worth telling people that it can take years because sometimes you have to start from scratch. Both of us had to start from scratch
with building relationships again.
And I don't feel safe in relationships the first year.
Yeah.
Like I might feel safe.
It takes a while to build intimacy and connection and to build dependability in a relationship. Like, hey, you're my person that I call. I can depend on you. I know what to expect. That just takes time.
Yeah.
You know, and I think the biggest thing is not losing hope in the midst of that and just continuing to like, you know what, maybe this, like I'm slowly building. I'm slowly building around me.
And the last thing that I want to say is we didn't give you all the answers for what to do with attachment crises and all the things. We just kind of narrated a lot about what attachment can be like and feel like. There are ways to heal your attachment pain.
Totally.
One of them is actually learning how to notice good moments of connection. Like something that would help me out of trauma would be like right now, I can feel synergy with me and Pietze. Right now, I know that she loves me and that we get to be together and this is safe. And actually noticing the healthy connection and then narrating it to myself so that my brain starts to hear there are safe moments. There are safe attachments. The other thing is for me is God has been a really anchoring because he can actually, God's love can be a secure attachment.
Yes.
When everyone else fails. And I know that there's been times this year when I'm in that dark hole and it doesn't look like I can count on people where I will be like, but I actually know that there's an eternal being that loves me and never wants to stop loving me.
That love will never be removed.
That love will never be removed. That love won't be removed if I F things up. Like if I screw everything up, that love won't be removed. If I and go into disorganized attachment, that love won't be removed. If like God wants to love and forgive and be near me all the time. And that relationship idea, even just the idea that there is a love that is stable.
Yes.
That there is a love that is unshakable.
Yes.
That is immovable. Even the verse, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. When you've had attachment crisis, people changing feels like such a threat.
Yeah.
So then you have this God who is not changing. This God who loved you before you were born, loves you while you're here, will love you afterwards, has lived.
Loves you in your mess, loves you in your health. It does not matter. It is not moved.
Yes.
Yeah.
That stable love can help reorient us to secure attachment.
100%.
I don't want to shame people because when I went through an attachment crisis, I couldn't actually feel God's love anymore.
It's really difficult.
Like it broke my ability to feel that.
Because our threat response is so high that even things, and when your threat awareness is that high, even people in relationships and God that felt safe suddenly don't. And that's the reason that happens. It's not because God's changed.
No,
oftentimes our threat response is so high that even things and people that are safe become not safe.
Oh yeah.
You know?
And the beautiful thing is you can become safe again.
You can.
You can actually.
You can always become. And we've done it several times.
And and I've been working on creating safety in my life, learning how to notice safety. That's why we teach on it a lot. Because when you reorient to safety, for a lot of people, if you can't feel God, you might have had attachment pain. That might be the thing blocking it. You might have had trauma. It might have taken out your ability to feel safe in your body. Both of those things can block our ability to feel God's nearness. It doesn't mean his proximity has changed at all.
I love that.
Well,
we're all becoming healthy attachers.
We're going to learn.
We're learning.
The thing that I want to leave people with is the way that I feel about my own life, and I know you do too, is I've just given up on my timeline of when I should be healthy by.
Totally. It's about the journey. It's not about the destination. And there's actually beauty in the journey. And when we make it about like, I need to be a certain place, we've missed it because there's beauty in the journey. There's beauty in the struggle. There's becoming in the struggle. Yeah.
And I've given up that I'm only worthy of love once I have secure attachment. I'm only worthy of love once I can do it all right. I've decided I'm going to allow myself to be loved as long as it takes. And I'm going to agree with love and be a secure attachment for myself by saying you have all the time you need, baby girl.
I love that. I love that so much. And I love you.
If this episode has connected to you, please share it with people. That's how we get the words out. And that's how people's lives change and transform. Share it on social media, send it through text, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, share it. Pass it along. Pass it along to the person who you're like,
Can we talk through some attachment
yeah,
things?
I think there might be some attachment things we
Can we figure out how we can attach better? Yeah. We should talk about how to create a secure attachment in another episode.
That's
Me
a good
and you.
idea.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Okay.
All right.
If you want to find Pietze, she's on Instagram. Pietze Duffield. And you can email her if you want. Pietze at contact.com.
Contact at pietze.com.
Contact at pietze.com. Hashtag dyslexic.
Hashtag dyslexic.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.